let's get into this then, shall we? So, managing the client experience. So, client experience is something that is vital right now. It isn't sort of an optional thing. It's something that a lot of our clients are spending a lot of time, effort, energy in making sure that they get it right, because it's actually a commercial imperative. It's not fluffy. It's not just all about, being nice to everybody we speak to. Actually, it's actually about how we win more of the right kind of work from the right kind of clients. And so it is something that, as I said, is not really optional. So let's have a little pit stop before we even get going, in terms of just making sure that we understand what we mean when we talk about client experience and client experience management, because I suspect that it means different things to different people. There is a quote here, a definition by Forrester: systematic approach to interacting with clients that consistently builds loyalty. It is said, and I know that all these statistics are arguable, but it is said that it is 5 times easier to win work from existing clients than it is to win work from new clients. And certainly in terms of the cost of winning work from existing clients and your win rate, if you like, your cost of sale, it is clearly much lower when you're winning work, when you've already got the relationship, you're not spending the marketing pound or dollar, you are able to push out doors that are already ajar, if you like, in order to build relationships with people and have them come back to you. And having them come back to you is that thing that we really want to focus in on. So a McKinsey report in 2019, when the world was a different place, obviously, referred to it as the next competitive battleground in terms of the whole focus on client experience. And I concur with that. If you think about, most of you on this call sell services, what that means is that you have a degree of technical expertise, you have experience, knowledge that you sell, and you sell that in packages of time. It is extremely difficult to differentiate your offer, your package of time and expertise, against a competitor offer. And if you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, if they're receiving bids or proposals from similar type organizations, it is very difficult for them to differentiate in terms of who they want to buy. So there's a couple of key things. One is, having a good client experience means that our clients will find it easier to buy from us and to continue to buy from us. And the other thing is that they become our advocates. They become an extension of our marketing department. They talk about us, they will refer us, and word of mouth is still a very important mechanism in terms of marketing. So let me just give you a couple of other pointers here as to sort of setting my case out as to why, if you're not already investing in managing the client experience, you should be. So we are, as it says on the screen there, much more used to having services that are easy for us to buy, that we the Amazon effect, if you like, the idea that we can buy certain things, we have a certain level of service that we are used to, that when we buy something, we expect high quality, we expect it in a timely fashion, we expect it at a competitive price. And you know what, if we don't like it, we'll send it back. Now, I know I'm sort of talking about products there in some ways, but it is exactly the same in terms of services. And this personal experience that we have is very relevant now in the business to business world. And I'll just let you stop and read the screen. So experience is as important as the product or service. Now, I think let's just stop on that bullet point for a second, because the end result of the work that you do, so if you're a legal firm providing legal advice, and when you come to the end of the matter, then the client wants a good result. They want to make sure that they've got what they they paid for. If you're delivering a project, if you're in construction or engineering, environmental services, that kind of thing, then the client wants it timely and on budget. But actually the journey to get there is as important. I completely agree with that, because I think there's a great deal to be said about the journey in terms of the emotive side of things. What is it like to work with you as an organization? Do you understand me, the way I like to work, etc.? Do you make my life easy? Do you take the stress away, and that kind of thing? So these are some interesting stats from Salesforce research. Other stats for you is that Forrester tells us that 72% of businesses agree that improving client experience is a top priority. Dimension data say that those who are investing in CX, client experience, are reporting an increase in data, and Gartner suggests that this is a primary basis for competition moving forward. So you could almost argue that I'm peddling client experience. I'm not. I just think that for my clients and the work that we do, that it is something that we can't really avoid. It is also fact, research-based, that dissatisfied customers will tell lots of people, and they'll keep telling them for a longer time than if they have a good experience. So that's a shame that that ratio isn't the other way around. But I think what it does mean is that we need to limit the number of bad experiences that our clients have, because it takes up to 12 positive experience to make up for one unresolved negative experience. Now, I think a key word there is unresolved. It's a fact of life. When we're dealing with our clients, when we're in the world of professional services, things don't always go perfectly. You know, any project never survives contact with reality, which is a sort of a military term that I've kind of turned into something else. But you get the point that things will go wrong, and it's how we deal with those bumps in the road, if you like. In fact, I was talking to a client just this morning and came up with this analogy that it's a bit like a car going along the road when you're working with a client, and sometimes that road is beautifully tarmacked and level and everything else, and everything is very smooth, but occasionally the road gets a bit bumpy, and the way in which the vehicle travels, that the relationship is all about the suspension being able to absorb those bumps in the road until we get back onto that nice, soft, easy tarmac again. So I want to share with you some priorities here in terms of the things that you can do as organizations to make sure that your client experience is as good as it can be. So let me just share those with you, and then what I'll do to move on and conclude our short webinar today is to also talk about what individuals can do to increase the experience that clients have with us. So, number one, make it a strategic priority. Now, what I mean by that is that it has to become something that everybody in the business, from the very top to new recruits and grads, etc., they understand what client experience is in your organization. So you almost have to brand it. So it becomes a bit of a mantra, a doctrine. It's something that people get behind. They understand the way in which you interact with clients. And I think that internal and external thing is important as well. I'll expand on a couple of these things. Make sure you are engaging your clients. It seems obvious, but I have seen it too many times where there's a whole sort of client experience program, but not actually listening to the client. So make sure we are doing that at multiple levels. Understand how clients come to you in the first place, what the journey is when they're working with you, and what the follow-up is as well. Understand if there are pinch points and make sure we're dealing with them. Deliver as promised. Expectation management is absolutely essential. Always meet those expectations. If we can exceed at times to delight our clients, then that is something we should try and do. I don't know how many of you have come across the term psychological safety. It seems to be very much in vogue at the moment, and something that I think a lot of organizations can take something from, in terms of how the organization works together and how it works with each other, how your teams gel and work with each other. And again, I will just go through each one of these in a little bit more detail. Again, just to remind you, if you've got any questions or you want me to sort of come back to something, perhaps just pop a question in the chat. Very happy to respond to it straight away or towards the end of the session. Okay, so making it a strategic priority. One of the things is to make sure that customer experience, client experience is absolutely linked to the growth of the business, that it isn't a fad, it isn't an initiative, it's not something, oh, it seems to be in vogue, we better do it, it's this year's initiative, because I bet you that all of you have got a degree of initiative-itis. Most of my clients do. So if we're going to link it to growth, if it's going to become part and parcel of the way we do things, we need to set out our stall. We need to measure things that we can point to our investment in managing our clients' experience by the number of referrals that we get, for example. How much cross-selling is happening. So we are introducing colleagues from different disciplines, different subject matter experts into our clients. We should capture that, measure it, and point to our CX as a way that is happening, facilitating that. Getting introductions into new parts of the client and the number of non-tendered opportunities. So these are just examples of the way that we might be able to measure our CX impact. Another thing, which is probably harder to measure, but really crucial, is leadership, and how leaders set the tone for all of us. And if we have our leaders, and when I talk about leaders, I talk about leaders right through the business. So you'll have your senior leadership team, and you'll have other leaders who are middle leaders as well. Now, I've found, and again, recent experience with a client where we had a little disconnect between the sort of strategic side of the business, senior leadership, and the middle management, because the middle management are so pressed and pressured for time and utilization that whilst the idea of CX is a good one, actually putting it into practice was very difficult at that level. Yeah, just couple of conversations. Thank you for that. Junying Lee, thank you for that. So making everybody in the organization fluent in the priority of customer experience. Let me come back to that, if I may. Fluency gets diluted and there's a disconnect. Yeah, so I think part of what I'm talking about at the moment is making sure that we have this understanding about what it is, what client experience means for us as a firm, and making sure that everybody in that firm understands what it is. And then we move on to the behaviors thing that I'm talking about before here. Internal experience management. So the way in which we go about setting out our stall for making sure that the experience is a good one starts in-house. Now, many of you, because I've worked with some of your firms in the past, and many organizations have internal departments, of course you do. And it might just be, you've got sales and marketing and finance, and some of you will have PMs and QSs, and others will have lawyers who have a family, some are corporate, some are employment, etc., etc. So many potential silos, and I don't like that word so much, but unfortunately it's a fact of reality. But making sure that we are working with each other internally in a way that we want to be working, which links to the point I made about psychological safety. So listening is another thing that we've got to get right. So actually listening to our clients, if we're project-based business, we need to make sure that we're engaging before the project and asking questions like, How do you like to work? How do you like to communicate? Who are the lines of communication? You know, when should we be reporting? When should we be touching base with each other? So getting those ground rules of projects right saves so much pain and so many difficult conversations later on. So taking the time to do that, and then going back to the client midpoint, saying, okay, how are we doing? We set out these expectations before the project. Give us that feedback. How are we doing? How are we working against these sorts of things? And then, of course, seeking after the fact, how did it go? What would we do differently? What would we change? And actually, can I just make a point here that being a very good client-centric organization is not just about bending over backwards for your clients. It is actually also challenging where challenging is necessary. So if our challenge to the client is to say, look, in order to make this a better experience for you, there's areas here that you need to do differently, that you need to perhaps change, and that would have a better impact on things as well. We should probably have an annual catch up with our best clients. And it's really a sort of a broad catch up, not necessarily project related, but about the overall relationship. We might give third parties the reins, if you like, asking third parties to do that feedback, to capture that knowledge from the client, so that the personality involved, it doesn't compromise the truth, if you like, that people don't want to soften it because they don't necessarily want to hurt feelings. And then, of course, there's the informal catch up, which has been much harder to do during COVID times. But, you know, as we are getting out and back seeing our clients, that so-called water cooler in between meetings is the sort of thing that I'm talking about there. So the customer journey is something that we should be thinking about as well. So if you haven't mapped out your customer journey, it's something I'd recommend that you do. And I mean that in terms of, you know, what is the journey beforehand? So how do we market to our clients? How do they come into our world, and understanding that side of things? Understanding the sales, bidding, tendering, depending on how you win work. That first bit of delivery, when we're first engaging with our clients, how does that work? And then ongoing communication. So many of you will have lots of repeat business with lots of clients. Communication is one of the absolute keys to getting this right, and making sure that we are regularly getting that feedback in terms of how the communication is going. And then, of course, there's the billing phase, and what I call advocacy. And an NPS, for those of you who don't know, is Net Promoter Score, which is a thing that you can deploy, and effectively what it asks your clients: how likely are you to recommend us to others in our marketplace? So mapping the journey, understanding if there are pinch points, making sure that we are working to unlock those pinch points, but don't make the mistake that to focus only on pinch points. You know, if your client feedback is saying, well, you know, we have an issue with billing, I don't know, just picking something. I think it's important to ask why, rather than to go into solving mode and say, okay, well, let's just focus on the billing, because, you know, it might be further back in the journey where the problem actually starts. Now, you've all heard this: delivering as promised, under promise, over deliver, everybody says. Now, I question this a little bit. I don't think it's entirely necessary to always under promise and over deliver. I think it's actually more important to make sure that we are doing as we said we would. And I think that is enough. And if at times, on occasions, you can over deliver and delight the client with a little bit of value add, something that you bring to the table that makes their life easy, makes them look good, anything that is valuable for them, I think that they should be things that should be dropped in on occasions rather than trying to do that all of the time, because frankly, it's probably just not not that possible. A point I would like to make about delivering as promised, though, is a little bit about human psychology. And that is, when all of us make a promise, we want people to be happy. You know, we say, yes, I'll get that to you by close of business on Monday. Client, big smiley face, great, fantastic. And then Monday comes and the world has fallen in. One client over here, a boss over there, circumstances beyond our control, life happens, family happens, all sorts of things happen. And we struggle and we work very, very late. And maybe we send that thing, whatever it was, at 10 o'clock that night. Unfortunately, we have broken a little bit of a contract there, broken a promise. It might be a tiny promise. But unfortunately, we are measured at the point of delivery. So my advice there is to push out the point of promise as much as you possibly can, so that we can always, or as much as we possibly can, deliver within that promise. Now, I mentioned something about psychological safety. Have a quick look at the cartoon, and you might just warm to that. Have you ever been in a meeting where you're thinking, should I say it? Is it time for me to speak up? Well, psychological safety. So there's a book by Amy Edmondson, which is called Fearless Organizations. She actually wrote another one called Teaming. So Amy Edmondson, Harvard Business School. Both of these books, by the way, are great. So that's Fearless Organizations and Teaming by Amy Edmondson. Superb. And she talks a lot about psychological safety. And psychological safety, just in a nutshell, is actually about safety between teams who will support each other and actively promote interpersonal risk taking. So in other words, so like this poor woman here who's sat at that desk thinking, I've got an idea, or I've seen something, I know that this could help us, but it doesn't seem the right time. I'm an introvert, there's a room full of extroverts, I haven't got space to get my voice in. You know, so many times it's very difficult. But a psychological safe organization who is fearless in the way in which they operate will absolutely encourage everybody, will reward any suggestion, however off the wall it might be. Extroverts invite introverts into the discussion, whether it's an online or offline discussion, and actually create this environment where, you know, linking this to client experience, they will see things that may improve it. And actually it's about making sure that everybody has that voice, because everybody can see areas where we can possibly improve our approach to things. So it's a little whistle-stop tour this at the moment, and I'll just take a very brief pit stop and maybe even have a sip of water if there are any questions at this point.
I really like what you have kind of shared so far. If I may, again, I guess circle back to the part where I think you're talking about having everybody in the company be clear about what client experience is, etc. Right? Do you have while I think that there's no magic bullet, I think it's really you have some, I guess, frameworks or some mental model to approach this.
Yeah, sorry, I'm the middle bit of your question faded out a bit, just went a bit robot zoomy land. But I think I got what you're after here. Look, I think you have to treat it like many strategic elements within the business, and it starts with the senior team. So it becomes a strategic imperative, and then as it trickles down, then you need to have a task force is the best way. You have an internal task force that says, okay, let's agree what it is. let's go out to the business, let's get some feedback from our clients and from our colleagues, and let's put together our charter. And then obviously everybody needs to sign up to the charter and understand what it is. And then you have to layer on top of that the skills and behaviors where companies like mine come into play and develop those skills and behaviors. And it becomes a living, breathing thing that people regularly discuss, contribute to, and we provide feedback and even sort of, you know, measurements that see us improving. And that's the kind of thing that gets everybody on board. Hopefully that helps a little bit. All right, let's just move on. So I've got about another 10 minutes here. Now, what about individuals? So we've talked a little bit about how an organization goes about improving this. What about the individuals out there talking to clients? Okay, so let's have a quick look at this. So we know, and this is research based in terms of buyers of professional services. So an evolution, if you like. So initially, buyers would buy in and they'd plug gaps, they'd fill holes in their own offering. And those holes would be filled by somebody who has some expertise, a subject matter expert, an I-shaped person, if you like. So narrow and deep expertise. But then that wasn't good enough. And what they wanted, they being the buyer, they wanted that individual to have a degree of knowledge across a number of different disciplines. Now, nobody expected them to be experts, but a degree of knowledge so they could bring that to the client. But that has developed even further now, where yes, we still want that expertise, that deep expertise. We still want the broad technical knowledge. Now, added to that is an expectation that you or the individual who works for the client has a broad understanding of their world, and they demonstrate it by the questions that they ask about what's going on in the client's world, and the knowledge that they can bring to that in terms of the themes, the challenges, the legislation, the regulatory environment, etc. And then finally, an expectation of empathy and professional curiosity that will demonstrate that people are caring about their clients. Now, I'm only going to go over this quite quickly because you can get a bit deep with the trusted advisor model. But this is David Maister's work based on research from many years ago in terms of a trusted advisor is somebody that the client keeps going back to. And a trusted advisor is somebody that will deliver the greatest client experience at a personal level, because ultimately they make their life easy, they make them look good, and that they are someone that they want to do business with. So those four pillars: technical expertise, you know your stuff, the ability to manage projects, people, expectations, and me in terms of managing how I like to work, the knowledge that I've just talked about, you know, understanding the client's world, and the final pillar there, demonstrating a genuine interest in them and their objectives, their challenges, etc. And we can depict this by the good old Iceberg Principle. That any of you who've worked with me before will know that it's a metaphor we like to use, and I think it works here because what we must do is understand what makes our clients tick, both personally and professionally, ideally. So, you know, the information above the waterline that we see from them, or the behavior that we see for them, is driven by what sits below their metaphoric waterline, and the insight that we have about their personality, the internal politics, the challenges that they have, their ambitions, their key performance indicators. Imagine if you knew that your KPIs of all of your clients, and you were the one that helped them achieve those. I think they would ring you. I think they wouldn't be looking to go elsewhere. Their concerns and their objectives. So if we can find out that stuff and we can proactively help them with that, then clearly the experience is going to be better than it is with those who just simply do the job, deliver the service on time and on budget, and away they go. Now, I want to make a point about that, because you will have clients that want only on time and on budget, and that's still being able to deliver the client experience, because we must accept the fact that every iceberg and every client is different, and what their needs are different. So it's not a one size fits all this. It is about making sure that we are, particularly with our best clients, and a little bit of client segmentation is probably important here, to make sure that you're putting most emphasis, effort and energy in your best clients. And you might need to think about who they are if you hadn't already, and do some segmentation there. I suspect many of you have read Covey's book, The 7 Habits. I just want to remind you of one of them, which is about listening. If you do nothing else to actually try to create the best client experience, up your listening, turn it up from whatever it is now, from an 8 to a 9, from a 9 to a 10, or even up to 11, which is my little Spinal Tap reference for any of those who get that. So that, folks, is that. It is a whistle-stop tour today in terms of managing the client experience. There's a lot more out there. I would recommend the books by Amy Edmondson, and the McKinsey article on the pitfalls of managing the client experience I put on LinkedIn yesterday. So either find that through my LinkedIn post, or you can go to McKinsey, of course. I am always open to your questions. Please fire away now if you have any, or send them to me if you wish to after today. I'd be more than happy to help you.